Folks, I'm actually pretty pumped to be able to take some time out to talk about the color balance effect. As I'm going through this massive training series covering every single effect in After Effects, obviously there's a lot of effects I just don't use every day, and there's some like the color balance HLS effect coming up next that I've never ever used and I don't plan on ever using. But color balance is one of those ones that's really fun, very helpful. I absolutely love color balance and I use it all the time. I use it all the time in After Effects. I use it all the time in Photoshop. Now, I do have to say that the color balance in After Effects is a little bit less intuitive than the color balance in Photoshop, but they essentially work the same way, even though the interface is a little different. Now, we basically, again, kind of like we looked at in the last movie with Channel Mixer, we have two projects. We're going to use color balance to colorize some fractal noise fire, and we're also going to use color balance on this Artbeats clip to kind of give it a new tint and a new feel. Let's start out with fractal noise here. Basically what color balance does is it allows you to add color, kind of like we saw with Channel Mixer. But with Channel Mixer, we're giving and taking between color channels. And in color balance, you don't have that restriction. You could just say, you know what, I want more red in the shadows, or I want less red in the shadows. And you have separate controls for shadows, midtones, and highlights, which is pretty cool. Now, one of the things that really you need to know when you're working with color balance, kind of like with the Channel Mixer, is the color wheel. You need to know colors opposites. As we're working in After Effects here, we only have red, green, and blue parameters, but as you know, there are a lot more colors than red, green, and blue. So you need to know this color wheel, which is here in Wikipedia. And so basically we have red, green, and blue in the color balance effect in After Effects. And you need to know that the opposite of blue is yellow. The opposite of red is cyan, and the opposite of green is magenta. So if you're looking for a magenta color, there's no magenta button in color balance. You actually have to take out green in order for the magenta to show up. So being armed with color knowledge, we're now ready to tackle color balance here. So what I want to do to this fire, and basically this is great in conjunction with fractal noise, because fractal noise is this great grayscale pattern generating effect, and it really needs help to be colorized. And honestly, there are more simple ways to colorize fractal noise, like tint or something like that, or tritone. And there are more complicated ways too, like colorama. But color balance is kind of like the Goldilocks in between thing, where it's not too warm or too cold. It's just kind of a great balance between functionality and ease of use. So I want to increase the shadow red. And as we're doing this, you can see that we're actually adding red to the darkest areas of the flames. Doesn't look like fire yet, but we're getting there. Now we also want to add some yellow. Typically fire is not pure red, so having tons of red isn't going to do us too much good. So the way that we get yellow, because yellow is the opposite of blue, is we actually take yellow out of the shadows. And so now we can get an orange by adding red and subtracting blue. You'll see as we keep doing that with these channels here, adding red and subtracting yellow from the midtones, and then adding a little bit of red, and then subtracting a lot of blue in the highlights, we start to get something that kind of resembles fire. Now, there's this preserve luminosity switch, which honestly, folks, I don't really understand this, because the dictionary definition, actually the user guide definition of the preserve luminosity, its purpose is to preserve the overall tonal structure of the footage before you apply the effect. But I find that it does the opposite. So if I check preserve luminosity, then we definitely get a much higher contrast image than we had before we applied color balance. So it seems like luminosity is actually preserved better without preserve luminosity on. That being said, preserve luminosity is kind of like an intensity switch. It seems to make everything a little bit more vibrant. So now we'd go back and maybe back off some of these really intense reds. We set these settings really high at the beginning, because without the setting set, it takes a lot to make it jump around and dance and stuff. But there we go. Kind of cool. Now you'll also notice with the color balance effect, and you'll see this a little bit more in the footage that we're about to adjust. But as you're adjusting the shadow balance in a positive direction, you're actually adding more light and making things brighter. And when you take it into a negative, you're actually taking light out. So let's see what that looks like. Let's go to the PEA 125 comp here. Again, this is just a phenomenal Artbeats clip of some people in East Africa dancing around. And what we're going to do is we're going to use color balance to add the African colors of green, red, and yellow to this footage in a kind of realistic way. We want it to be stylized, but we also still want it to look non-cartoony and realistic. And color balance, again, helps us to straddle that line, that balance in between both. Now, here's what I was talking about light here. If I increase the red balance, you can see that it kind of gets brighter. And as I take out the red balance, we get a little bit darker. So again, we're adding light to the scene and taking light away. So yes, it's color balance, but just keep that in the back of your mind that you're also playing with the luminosity a little bit. Now, I'm going to hit reset here, and I have some numbers for you to type in to achieve this African look. So I'm going to type in for the shadow red balance 75, and then hit the tab key and type 60, tab -60, tab 30, tab 0, tab -60, tab 40, tab 0, tab -60. And so basically, as you can see here, we've added so much red and green and yellow to this image that it's almost like we have a tritone, but it's still kind of believable. So we added some green in the shadow green balance, and I don't think we added green anywhere else here. This is the only green, but that really helped to boost the green in the background. Without it, we basically have this, which looks just tinted with red. So allowing all of these things to kind of come in harmony together, we could kind of play with these colors. I just love this look. To make it look even more ethereal and dreamlike, we're going to turn on Preserve Luminosity to really make these colors pop. And now we have something that just looks spectacular. I love that look. We have a lot of reds, strong greens, strong yellows, very powerful. And what's really cool about color balance too is that it renders pretty quickly. So like as I scroll through, look, I'm scrolling through in real time, and as you can see here, these frames were not previously rendered. So it really doesn't take too much extra time to use the color balance effect. It's just an all-around great tool for playing around with color.